welcome to the program. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. You're watching Smart 24 TV, and we do drive your business. My name is Anthony Sebale, and I am your host here at the #1 business channel in East Africa. We talk financial markets, where we, of course, get to look into the stock market here in East Africa, in Uganda, Nairobi, and as well as the rest of Africa, and of course get to cross over to the other global markets and give you the latest on the stories making headlines in the global and regional financial markets. You can follow me on Twitter at Smart24TV and at Anthony Sebale. That's my personal handle there. Remember, the show is proudly brought to you by Altex East Africa, your #1 stock exchange in Africa, and they bring you the latest on treasury bonds now in the market under their Zabu initiative by simply giving you a USSD code now, which you can dial and be able to transfer funds off your mobile wallet onto the exchange and purchase bonds across East Africa. With Altex East Africa, we are saying you can do something new. Simply get your phone and dial that number *292# and follow the prompts. You will definitely be able to open an account and register, but also buy or sell treasury bonds with as little as 15,000 Ugandan shillings at the moment. Remember, Altex is regulated by the Capital Markets Authority of Uganda, and they are, of course, renowned now in Africa and East Africa for providing both stock market and treasury bond market information, and of course access to the markets here in Uganda. With Altex East Africa, we are saying you can do something new. Now let's get to see what happened on the 15th of February, as of course now today is a public holiday and the markets are closed. But yesterday there was trading, and so we would like to look back into what the Wednesday tradings were like on the Uganda Securities Exchange. Remember, on our exchange we have 18 companies listed on the exchange, and 8 of these are cross listings from mainly Nairobi, whereas 10 of these are domestically listed here on the Uganda Securities Exchange. Well, as per Wednesday trades, the market declined slightly in terms of the benchmark index. Overall, that is the all-share index, which tracks the aggregate performance of all the listed equities on the market, and the all-share index paired 1.3 points, which was a 0.11% decline in the day, and shedding off close to a couple of points there, 1.3 points in particular, to a total value of 1,213.30 points. Now, this represents currently 1 week losses of 0.44% overall and a 4-week loss of 0.69%. And in terms of year to date, of course, we've gone only about 1 month and a half into the new year. They have an overall gain of 0.06%. Last year, the index ended with losses of over 20% in year to date, and we began the year 2023 on that note in particular. So if you see any year to date loss here, it means that we are doing worse than last year. So we pray that it doesn't get to that much, but currently we are still at least on a year-to-date gain of 0.06%. Overall, the markets have improved generally speaking, but in the recent few days there was slow activity a little bit because, of course, of the back-to-school season. Probably parents are taking back kids to school, and there is definitely probably little money to invest at the moment at the hands or the disposal of the investors. But the markets are picking up based on the tradings of Wednesday, as we are going to discuss here. Now, according to the data from the exchange, we had 3 equities participate in trading on the Uganda Securities Exchange, and the day ended with just a single loser on the market, and that was MTN Uganda, who lost a 0.56% on their price at the moment, speaking about 179 Ugandan shillings per share from 180 shillings per share that was recorded on Tuesday. Well, Women recorded the biggest volume on the day at about 744,600 shares that were recorded on the company for the Wednesday tradings, followed by Stanbic Bank Uganda, the number most traded on stock on the Uganda Securities Exchange in the past quarter. Stanbic Bank Uganda traded close to 610,000 shares on Wednesday. And MTN Uganda, who lost during the day's trading, also traded 7,600 shares on the market. Now, as per the data, the all-share index lost some bit of value, but this also followed the local company index, of course, due to the loss of MTN Uganda stock at exactly about 0.31% decline in total, closing at 273.25 points. Now, currently, the local company index has also experienced a weekly loss of 0.31% and a 4-week loss of 0.21%, as well as a year-to-date gain of 0.21%. MTN Uganda, yes, the stock seems to be coming down. Remember, MTN Uganda has traded at 180 shillings since last year in November, around the close of November. They have been trading at a very stagnant price. One of the days, of course, in December, they had a little change in price upwards, but that was not sustained and it came back down to 180 shillings, and this was lost yesterday after the company chopped off a little from that value to 179 Ugandan shillings per share. Well, that affected their market capitalization on the exchange, which went down to 4.01 trillion, and currently it's still maintaining the third position in terms of value on the Uganda Securities Exchange, and a 19.2% equities market share on the entire Uganda Securities Exchange. This volume of 7,600 shares accrued a turnover of 1.36 million shares on the market on the MTN stock Uganda, and currently the stock is still at 22.4 billion shares outstanding on the Uganda Securities Exchange. Now, looking back slightly, MTN Uganda dropped 0.6% from 180 to 179 shillings. However, in the last couple of weeks since the beginning of the year, the company has lost 0.56% overall, ranking it the 11th in terms of year-to-date performance. But like I mentioned, the good side of the stock at MTN is that it's still in the third position amongst the most traded on stock, so you can be rest assured that probably this price could definitely go up once again, because at least investors are still showing a little bit more interest in the company, making it the third most traded on stock in the past 3 months. Within this period, we are talking now over a total volume of close to 23.1 million shares, valued at 4.17 billion Ugandan shillings turnover. Reports, of course, from the Capital Markets Authority continue to give credit to MTN, especially in terms of the trading and the turnover. They do have a big turnover, coming just behind Umeme on the exchange in terms of the turnover. Of course, this can be dedicated to their price, which is a little bit higher than the average for most of the most traded on stocks like Stanbic Bank and Stanbic Bank, as well as when you look into maybe UCL, Uganda Clays, and so on, it still comes at an averagely higher price. But the company's stock has been stagnant, which is kind of worrying. After the initial public offer, which was undersubscribed at 200 shillings, the company got released and started witnessing a decline in price, which was quite unhealthy. But later on, it picked up from the ruts and moved upwards and stabilized at 180, between 180 and 190. That's where we had the stock price almost for the entire 2022. Well, could we be going back to the former lower prices last year? I'm not very sure, but I can be highly skeptical that the stock will go further down, because there is still a lot of interest in the company as per the tradings on the Uganda Securities Exchange. Well, on the gaining side, we did not have any stock gain on the start day of trading. All the cross listings maintained their prices and had no trading as well, and only Umeme, Stanbic and MTN were able to participate in the day's trading. Now, as for Umeme, they had the biggest volume and the biggest turnover, of course, at their 300 shillings price. Currently, Umeme is still the eighth most valuable stock on the Uganda Securities Exchange, with close to 487 billion shillings in market capitalization of the over 1.62 billion shares floating on the exchange. Now, as per the trades yesterday from the 744,600 shares volume, they accrued a total of close to 223 million Ugandan shillings. Umeme here has, of course, been able to maintain their pricing as high as 300 shillings in the year 2023, which was gained following their public notice that was issued in December, expressing their, of course, the exit they're going to be making in 2025 in the month of March, as they, of course, have their concession expire there with the government of Uganda. They were signed under the government of Uganda to supply and distribute electricity in Uganda for the next 20 years after 2005, and that will be expiring in March of 2025. Well, the company will not be renewing that concession, and that means they will be terminating their stay as well on the exchange. That news, of course, came in to the surprise of many, but unfortunately or fortunately, the company's price started going up, and the demand as well for the stock went up. However, supply remained limited, and that as a result saw the price of the company go up and stay up at currently the 300 shillings price. At the moment, they are enjoying a year-to-date gain of 9.09%, which is the best so far on the exchange for 2023, and they are currently the second most traded on stock on the Uganda Securities Exchange, coming behind Stanbic Bank Uganda. In the last 3 months, they have had a total volume of 26.2 million shares, and these are valued at 6.64 billion Ugandan shillings. That makes them the company with the biggest turnover as well in the last quarter. That, of course, means they have had a lot of shares traded, and these have accrued a total of over 6.64 billion. The argument has been also that since listing on the exchange, the company has been able to add a lot of value, over close to 9% of the value from the initial shareholders there in the company. So the exit probably wouldn't be that big a big hit for the shareholders, as they're of course seemingly going to benefit from their shares. There are of course rules of delisting from the exchange. You don't just delist anyhow, and there are compensations to be made to the shareholders. Of course, the shareholder comes last in line. Of course, we do have creditors and other people coming ahead of the shareholder, but at the end of the line, still the shareholder has to be compensated in case of delisting of the company as per the USE Act amended, and that of course has to be observed by Umeme very soon. Away from Umeme, Stanbic Bank Uganda also had a big volume here of 610,000 shares traded on Wednesday. Now, remember, Stanbic Bank is also one of those stocks that are very, very important to the Uganda Securities Exchange. Currently, Stanbic still is the fifth most valuable on the exchange in terms of value of their market capitalization, which is over 1.07 trillion Ugandan shillings, and currently represents about 5.15% of the entire Uganda Securities Exchange. Now, their price yesterday was maintained at 21.00 Ugandan shillings, and we had a total gross turnover of 12.8 million Ugandan shillings, accruing from the 610,000 shares that were recorded on the third day of trading. They have a 51.2 billion share volume that is outstanding out there on the exchange, and this of course brings their market capitalization to the 1.07 trillion as per the 21.0 shillings per share, which is currently their stock price. Stanbic Bank continues to be like other stocks in the domestic docket here on the Uganda Securities Exchange, one of the most dedicated dividend issuers on the exchange. Last year they issued a dividend of over close to 100 billion to their shareholders, holding about 50 billion for 2020 and 50 billion for 2021, in which they were unable to actually get to issue a dividend. So is Stanbic Bank tradable at the moment? Yes, it's the #1 most traded on in the last 3 months. That's in terms of volume, and in turnover it has accrued 1.4 billion Ugandan shillings. Now that might sound a little bit less than the 6 billion of Umeme and the 4 billion of MTN, but the activity makes up for that, because the activity looks really, really good, with over 61.9 million shares, and the affordability of the stock. I mean, even if you save 20,000 a month, you can still be able to buy a lot of shares at the end of the day on the Stanbic Bank Uganda stock. And that's it from the big boys on the Uganda Securities Exchange. In total, we had a 1.3 million shares volume that was recorded on the exchange in Wednesday trades, and this was valued at 237.5 million Ugandan shillings, mainly contributed to by Umeme, which had a total of over 223 million traded on the Uganda Securities Exchange. And the current market capitalization of the Uganda Securities Exchange still stands at 20.9 trillion Ugandan shillings. And that's it from the Uganda Securities Exchange. Remember to visit www.ugandasecuritiesexchange.com for more information on how you can open an account and start your journey of trading. It's not that hard. It has been made easy. We have a USSD code as well, where you can register your Security Central Depository account under MTN. If you're an MTN subscriber, you simply dial *165 and then hash, of course, and then select option number 5, financial services, and then go to option number 7, that is Uganda Securities Exchange, and follow the prompts. Simple 1, 2, 3 steps, and your account will be open for you at no single cost. That's, of course, if you want to be a trader here on the Uganda Securities Exchange. We do have options, of course, for the international investors as well. We have quite many here on the exchange, so you can also be able to take part in this particular trading. Let's get to Nairobi Securities Exchange and have a look at what the market looked like at the Kenyan Stock Exchange. In total, we had 49 equities participating in trading out of the 65 listings of the Nairobi Securities Exchange in a trading day which saw the all-share index inch up over 0.11 points upwards, a 0.09 percentage increase in the all-share index points, which closed at 127.85 points on the exchange. Currently, the all-share index on the Nairobi Securities Exchange is enjoying a gain of over 7.1% in 4 weeks, and also a year-to-date gain of 0.3%, whereas in the shorter term, on the weekly performance, they have lost 0.32%, which doesn't look pretty good on a market that we are seeing here in East Africa as the busiest, but also as the benchmark of the East African capital markets. As per trades on Wednesday, there were 24 gainers on the day and close to 16 losers on the market. Crown Paints Kenya gained the most at an 8.36% increase in price, up to a price of 35 Kenyan shillings per share. Everready East Africa appreciated 7.46%, and Nairobi Securities Exchange, which itself is listed on Nairobi Securities Exchange after mutualizing in 2004, also had a 6.83% increase in price. Uchumi Supermarket appreciated over 5.56%. Those were the big 5 gainers on the market. On the losing side, however, Kakuzi came out with an end-of-day price depreciation of 6.99%, which was the worst for the day, at a closing price of 386 Kenyan shillings per share. Longhorn Publishers lost 6.25%, and Bamburi Cement lost close to 5.2%, whereas Samia Africa lost close to 3.77%. Equity Group Holdings continue to rally the East African market at a total volume of 4.36 million shares, and this was followed closely by Safaricom 3.48. There's been a lot of competition between Safaricom and Equity Group Holdings recently, and it looks really healthy. Safaricom has been dominating the moving of the East African, or rather the Nairobi Securities Exchange, but currently Equity Group Holdings is putting a lot of pressure in there, with now volumes coming in a balance a little bit here and there for Safaricom and Equity Group Holdings. KCB Group also had 729,500 and Cooperative Bank of Kenya 436,800 shares. Let's get to look into Equity Group Holdings a little bit here and see what their trading in the past few days has been like. Now, as per trades of Wednesday, they gained 0.2 Kenyan shillings. And this was closing at 46.15 Kenyan shillings per share, a 0.44% increase in price. Now, they traded a 4.36 million shares volume, accruing a 201 million gross Kenyan shillings gross turnover. This is one of the biggest trades they've had this year. When you look at the current market capitalization, they have about 174 billion Kenyan shillings, which makes them the second most valuable, coming behind Safaricom as well. They represent 8.75% of the entire Nairobi Securities Exchange equity market. Now, besides this gain for Wednesday, equity began the year with a price of 44.50 Kenyan shillings and has since then gained 3.71% on that particular pricing, ranking it the 17th out of 65 equities in terms of year-to-date performance. Equity Group Holdings continues also to rally the market in the second most traded on position in terms of trading on the Nairobi Securities Exchange in the past 3 months, recording over close to 83.6 million shares in that period, particularly valued at over 3.81 billion Kenyan shillings, which is also one of the biggest turnovers. So Equity Group Holdings should be one of those stocks you're looking out for if you're to trade on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. And that's the trading, my friend, from the East African markets. Remember, I want to remind you to ask for your maybe any stakeholders you could be in touch with to get to integrate our market. The East African market is in need of integration to make it easier for people to be able to trade across borders conveniently, and that is going to only happen if, of course, Nairobi gets to accept to list and fulfill the conditions for getting to list on this East African capital market. I believe firmly this will be a way to resolve the conflict of interests that have been there and ease market access across East Africa, and of course promote capital development in East Africa for that matter. Now, moving across to the United States, the US stocks had mixed reactions from the investors after strong retail sales data. Now, US stocks diverted Wednesday as investors pondered the outlook for interest rates after the economic data showed strong consumer spending and an uptick in inflation across January. Now, the S&P 500, which tracks the top 500 American companies, slumped over 0.2% of their value, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average raised 90 points or 0.3%. The technology-heavy Nasdaq, where we have the likes of Facebook, Google, and Twitter and other tech companies, was an outlier, rising at 0.4%. Retail sales smashed estimates last month, and data from the Commerce Department showed stocking worries that robust consumption combined with a higher than expected reading on consumer prices Tuesday may keep the Federal Reserve on a hawkish rack. That's currently the situation in the US markets. Remember, to trade across the US market, it's possible even when you're not in the United States. There are platforms which you can use, and it's good for you as an investor to diversify your portfolio by, of course, investing in different geographical locations as well, and that will definitely also spice up your portfolio. Thank you so much for joining us today. That's it from us. The Capital Markets Authority and the OTEX East Africa are saying you can invest in treasury bonds across East Africa with simply a dial on your phone, a *292# and 1 to 3 steps of registering using your national identification number. You can be able to open an account and start your journey of trading with OTEX East Africa. My name is Anthony. I'll catch you tomorrow, same time, same place. Bye for now.